Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Derek Chisora versus Deontay Wilder fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content or use the Patreon for betting tips and advice, and I will try my best to provide what I can. And again, I appreciate all the support in which I've had with it so far, and of course the link will be in the description. Let's get straight into this one, and this is a great fight to make at this point in both of their careers. I mean, it's a great card as well. It's just a real kind of exciting one for, the British and the American fans, just the whole heavyweight division. And I'm not just going to be speaking about this fight, I'm going to speak about two other ones in this card as well. But again, like I said, this is a real good headlining event, in my opinion. Definitely a fight that could have been talked about for a while and then just never ended up happening. It's one of them types of fights where we could have, and we kind of have really heard it rumoured for a little while with, these two at times, like, rumoured as kind of a fight. I mean, obviously, Deontay Wilder when he was a world champion and stuff, and when he was fighting Fury, there wasn't really talks of him fighting Chisora, but still, in more recent times, that definitely has been a talk and a topic, and to see it finally, like I say, get over the line, it's very nice. And of course, I'm very glad to see that it's here. Of course, it's both of their 50th fights in their career, and arguably the loser should retire. So there are big stakes on the line for both of these fighters. Both fighters have seemed to be down and out at certain points in their careers, and I mean, definitely more for Chisora's case to be able to, come back and rebuild quite the way that he has recently. Not even rebuild, I suppose, because I don't think he's changed much, but just the way that he's been able to revitalize his career is, really been good and really been exciting for the fans as well. And this is a true fan-friendly fight. Of course, as a main event of such a huge heavyweight event, maybe you would possibly prefer to see, some more kind of high-skilled heavyweight action. But I mean, that wouldn't be the case with this kind of a fight. It was going to be, a Derek Chisora, Deontay Wilder shootout for the fans. And again, that's just as entertaining in my opinion. It's not going to be the technical boxing that you want to see, but it's going to be entertainment and most likely a stoppage, or at least, some big punches being thrown, which hopefully the styles will gel. There is perhaps a possibility that both of these fighters could look like, somewhat old shot fighters to an extent, and it could be a bit of a hugging fight where it gets a bit sloppy and a bit messy. That might not be as entertaining, but, we're going to hope for the best and hope that, something like that, where it's a shootout and things like that, actually do end up happening. Chisora, in my opinion, is in a better spot than Wilder, coming off two bigger name wins against Joe Joyce and Otto Wallin. He has had a year out since then, but he basically will only fight the big fights now, so it does make sense that he has had a bit of time out where he's had to wait around for a big fight to become available to him. And I mean, he has even said that if he wins or loses, he will retire at his 50th fight, which now it's literally here. He said this a little while ago. Now it's here. I just don't know if that is the case if he wins. I think if he does win, with the fact that he's had two wins previously as well, he's not just going to stop, because he is actually then on the best kind of form in which he's possibly ever been in his entire career at a world level. So, again, I just don't feel like he'll retire if he will win. But he said he has, but so I suppose we'll wait and see. Chisora did look, in my opinion, down and out after his fight against Washington. Yes, he did win, but it was a really poor, just sloppy, not very nice fight. And that was him coming back after his bad loss to Tyson Fury in the trilogy, which nobody ever wanted to see. And I thought he'd struggle to get to the beating of any of the top names in the heavyweight division. But I think he's found a style he can deal with and have success against, which is kind of non-hard hitting in Otto Wallin and slash or a fighter who's just going to stand in front of you, in somebody like a Joe Joyce was going to do. And to be fair, Joe Joyce wasn't really ever the tremendously most powerful of punches, really. He was just really just known for having an indestructible chin, and that was, not really the case, after the Zhang fights. So I think both Joyce and Wallin were real good matchups stylistic-wise for Chisora, and so could Deontay Wilder, to be fair, but I just don't feel like any heavyweight who's a bit more dynamic will, deal well with what Chisora wants to be fighting and who he wants to be against. If he's fights something like a Usyk or something like an Atalma or just even something like a Fabio Wardley, just somebody that offers something a little bit different or has a real good, snap and still has enough life left in their fight, I think Chisora's just not going to have that same level of success. It's the same what we've seen from him every time in which he's fought Tyson Fury as well. Of course, Wilder has been known for having that powerful punch, but we just don't know how much it's there to a strong effect anymore at this point in Wilder's career. Of course, the power is always the last thing to go, and it is still there, but it's also just being willing to land it and to throw it and to commit to it is, something in which plenty of heavyweights have had to deal with. And that hesitancy, of course, we've seen it from Joshua in more recent times as well, just that reluctancy to really throw and commit to the big punches. And it seems to be the same kind of case with Deontay Wilder. He's had, in my opinion, higher highs than that of Chisora throughout his career. Of course, with him winning a world title and defending it a couple of times with his wins, his best wins being against Ortiz twice, who of course he beat for the title. But after the end of the Fury fights, he just hasn't been the same, and he is in need to have a resurgence in this fight. Otherwise, you'd have to say that he is done, with a lot of fans already calling him to retire, as he got demolished by Zhilei Zhang and got beaten up by Joseph Parker as well. And I feel like, it was inevitable that the Fury fights would take a lot out of him, but it does look like they've taken an awful lot out of him, and he really, like I say, just isn't willing to commit to the same kind of punches and have that same kind of aggressive, just put everything on the line kind of intent in which we did once see from him. Again, it just kind of seems to be gone. And also, to be fair as well, his career was always a bit of a weird one because he had a lot of fights in his career. Of course, now this is his 50th fight, but it's only really been the past, few fights of his really where he has fought at a high level. He had about 35, probably 40 fights where they were just against, much lower level opposition in which he should have been fighting at that point. And he was picking and choosing. Credit to Shelly Finkel for being able to really go down a route which was easier for him at that time, but to still lead him to have success though, and to still lead him to look destructive. So he was never really known for being a technical heavyweight at all. So maybe it was inevitable that something like this would happen. Maybe it wasn't the Fury fights. Maybe it was just going to happen that he would, end up like this at some point. But of course, we've also heard the multiple excuses in which he has made, but also the whole kind of ayahuasca thing in which he's gone on, which has seemed to affect him mentally, where he's just not really the same kind of aggressiveness in his persona as what we have seen from him in the past. And fans also, in general, like I say, leading on from that, just don't know if he has that destructive side in him anymore. Of course, he did win by KO against Herdon last time out, which again was a much lower level opponent, and he also didn't knock him out cleanly. It was just kind of a referee having enough and calling it off. And he is starting to talk more aggressively in this fight. Of course, we saw the whole kind of clip of him getting annoyed at Simon Jordan and just kind of getting really angry. Again, that could be something showing again that the aggressiveness that he needs is back. I don't know. That could just be a fake persona to try and hype up things for the fans. Again, we're not too sure. Of course, these two are good friends, so there's not going to be an aggressive back and forth between the two of them, I don't believe. Again, you never know with Derek Chisora, but still, it's just not looking the best mentally for Deontay Wilder at the moment. To speak about both fighters individually though, Chisora as a fighter, he does have heart and he does have a good chin, and we've seen that on display in multiple ones of his fights. He's fought plenty of hard-hitting opponents. Of course, he has been stopped on a few occasions, but you look at the stoppages in which he's had, two of them have been against Tyson Fury, and also he of course lost to Dillian Whyte as well, which was a bit of a shootout as well, and then he's only had one since then. But again, you look at all the other fights that he's had on his resume against some real top names. I mean, of course, he fought Vladimir Klitschko for the world title as well. So he has fought some of the elite heavyweights around, and he hasn't been stopped by a lot of them. Even though he's not always won, he hasn't always been stopped as well. So I do feel like he does have that heart and that good chin as well. He uses a little bit more head movement than I feel like Deontay Wilder does, and he's actually was starting to show a little bit of it in the early kind of parts of the Wallin fight, which was nice. And again, something a little bit different, showing the improvements are still there from Chisora. He isn't hesitant and he fully commits to every punch in which he throws, and he will try and stick it on early. Well, hopefully he does. When he's at his best, he does. And when he was against Wallin, he stuck it on him early and he had a lot of success. If he can do that against Wilder, again, not being hesitant and not being reluctant, which he never is, Chisora, that could really catch Wilder out. He started to use the cross guard a bit as well, which is not a bad guard, and to be fair, could limit the straight shots of Wilder coming through as well, which might be nice. He rips to the body well, again going body to head with his heavy combinations that he does throw with pretty much only hooks. He's good when he puts the pressure on, like I say, with early combinations, and he also tie you up when he needs to as well, and he will, like I say, probably tie him up if he gets tired and stuff like that. But he is also a threat, at most points of the fights. He will try and at times give you probably a false sense of security when he starts to get tired, because he will back up against the ropes, but then he will just continually throw a big one every so often, and it's a big punch, and if it lands, it can knock out anybody. I mean, Carlos Takam got knocked out bad by it. Joe Joyce got knocked down by it. Multiple fighters have been affected by the power of Chisora's overhand that he throws from, God knows where he gets that from, and it just comes over and lands. And again, he does have pretty accurate work for the most part as well, and so he knows when to throw the big punch. Negatives about him: he's very flat-footed. He backs up when he gets tired and then just sits on the ropes, using very little defensive movement to get out of any bad spots in which he gets put up against, especially when he gets tired and, uses all his energy that he has. He's not that fast, and he does slow down throughout. At the start, against Wallin, he was putting it on quite early, but again, still for the most part, he is not that fast of a fighter. And Wilder, in his prime days, was definitely faster, in my opinion. He's predictable with the overhand at times when he does get tired and he does start to fling it over. I haven't seen too many fighters just start boxing at a jab when he's just flinging over that punch, except from the likes of like a Tyson Fury. He does forget the jab himself and doesn't really use it at all. Again, he's quite limited with his variety of punches, bar just hooks all over the place. He leans heavy on the front foot when he's throwing and definitely could get caught with an uppercut. He squares up and kind of falls back off balance quite often when he's finished his combinations. He can sometimes swing and overcommit from quite far out, and he can also stay in range too long when he's in range as well, and he's a big target for counters, especially when he's finished his combinations as well. Wilder, as a fighter, he of course carries very good power. We've seen the destructive, reckless, ruthless knockouts in which we've had from him in his career, in the earlier parts of his career before the Fury fights, but again, that's not really been seen all too much recently. He can, and I think he's best boxing at mid-range with the powerful straight shots in which he has. If he can get at a mid-range when Chisora possibly tires, and if he can get to them later rounds, the powerful straights could definitely have success, because, Chisora could get times with them, and he's very reckless coming in, Chisora. When he's able to control the pace, he, has more success. And again, if Chisora can tire, he might allow him to control the pace a bit more. But at the same time, in the earlier rounds, Chisora, if he sets a fast pace, Wilder might become a bit uncomfortable. He's not got a bad jab when he uses it either. Again, if he can use that range and actually keep a bit of a distance, that would be nice. He's not got awful timing when he's at his best as well. And again, he could time Chisora as well. He tries to punch through you, which again leads to just the power in his punches. He tees off if he gets you on the ropes as well. So again, if Chisora is tired and just resting on the ropes, Wilder will tee off. Again, could possibly get caught with a shot when doing so, but again, he will at least try and tee off. And he uses bits of head movement as well. Again, very limited, but little bits of head movement here and there as well. Negatives about him: he's, in my opinion, like I say, definitely becoming hesitant, less reluctant to throw, and especially dealing with punchers who are movers or put the pressure on him as well. Again, that can really just fluster him and get him confused and just make him, not want to commit. And his hands are very low, and he just can't seem to keep them up when he needs to. You can tell that it's been drilled in him that he needs to keep his hands up, but it just never really seems to work. He'll use it for a bit and then he'll get caught with a big shot and then he will just instantly react in a way, which isn't the right way. And he puts himself in a bad spot when he's reacting as well. And we've seen that now against, in that Zhang fight especially, he got caught with punches and he was spinning around and he just looked lost and clueless. And even before that, he was getting caught with punches and just trying to like push them away instead of actually trying to block or react in the way an actual boxer, normally would. He doesn't always throw enough to keep you off him at this point in his career. Again, like I say, handling that pressure, and when the pace isn't in his favour, he will stay on the ropes as well if he's in a bad spot as well. He's got wide hooks and he's wild often with them hooks, and that can lead to poor accuracy as well. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I'm going to go with probably quite a bold prediction. Not in the winner, but in how it ends. I'm going with a Derek Chisora win via TKO in round 4. I think it's going to be an early stoppage by Derek Chisora where he really does beat up Deontay Wilder. Obviously they're friends, so I doubt that Chisora is going to really want to put loads of damage on, but he's fought his friends before. Him and Tyson Fury have made a lot of money together and they seem to get along quite well as well. So I think he is going to just put that pressure on early, go body to head. Wilder's not going to know what to do, and it's going to really disrupt him because it's going to be a pace in which Wilder is just not comfortable at all in them early rounds, and he can get caught out on multiple occasions. And probably around the 4th or the 5th round, it's going to really start to affect Wilder when, his hands start to drop a bit because he's been caught a few times. Again, then he'll get caught more, and inevitably, I think the ref will probably jump in, or Wilder could even get flatline KO'd. I don't know how bad his chin's got at this point in his career, but he's just not going to be allowed to box at a range long enough. And I just don't think it's going to go into the later rounds where I think that Wilder could possibly then have more success. Who he could then go on to fight next, of course, he could retire, like he said he was going to at one point. But again, I highly doubt it because he's always been a money man and money fighter. So again, I doubt it. So he was kind of in line to fight for the IBF title at one point. So I don't know what's happening with that. I don't really want to see him fight Usyk again. He had a tough fight with Usyk where he did show a bit of grit and gave some problems to Usyk, but I just don't think I want to see that happen again. And the IBF have kind of gone down a bit of a different route now. Of course, they were ordering Sanchez to fight Richard Torres Jr. If that fight cancelled for, I think, Torres getting an injury again, I'm not entirely sure, it might have been Sanchez, but Sanchez could end up fighting Derek Chisora instead, and that could be, something there for a eliminator for the world title, I suppose, to an extent. But if not, a Richard Riakporhe fight would be a good fight, but, again, I don't know if that's, good enough level for Derek Chisora. But of course, Riakporhe is a former world champion, so again, that could be something there argued. Or an Anthony Joshua fight actually could be there for Derek Chisora. Derek's fought the majority of the top heavyweights, especially from Joshua's kind of era, really, which isn't really now. But that could be the name. I mean, Chisora's fought Usyk, he's fought Fury, he's fought Dillian White. I feel like Joshua's the names that's missing, and that could be a real good, fight for both guys, and it could really sell well, that fight, I think. Two real fan British favourites, and again, hopefully that maybe could happen as well, maybe as a bit of a supposed warm-up fight for Joshua to then lead on to the Fury fight. But again, maybe I'm just kind of hoping for the best and it just isn't going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. Let's go on to now speak about another fight on this card. It is Viddal Riley versus Mateusz Masternak for the EBU European Cruiserweight title. And this is a major step up for Viddal Riley, and I'm surprised to see that he's been given the chance to take a step up like this. I thought he was going to try and fight and defend his British title for a little bit longer, but obviously he hasn't even tried to go for one defence. Instead, he's just, like I say, moved straight up, which again, to the European level, is a big step up. Of course, that didn't work out for Chev Clark when he tried to move up them levels quickly, but of course, Riley was able to beat Chev Clark, so you would imagine his skill level is kind of higher at that point. So it is a big step up. It's interesting because now he's signed with Misfits Pro. He kind of is the face of Misfits Pro to an extent, which is just essentially Wasserman, but been branded by KSI a little bit. But again, it is also interesting to see that boxer, a former boxer name in Viddal Riley, they're now gone. And since going and leaving boxer, they've then instantly go on to have an upgraded, bigger name, bigger fight. That's happened with the likes of Caroline Dubois as well, and a few names that have left. Not happened with Ben Whittaker just yet, but it has happened with now a couple names in which have left boxer, which again is just interesting in my opinion. But this is a good matchup and a good fight, but it might be a little bit too soon for Riley. Again, I don't know. This could show his real ability if he is able to get a win here. Riley is getting all these big show occasions, having, of course, this show to now fight on, but also he fought on the first Conor Benn Chris Eubank Jr. undercard against Chev Clark and made a good show and performance there, beating him in clearer fashion than the former European champion who Clark lost to in Moscada beat him. Moscada had a closer fight with him than Riley did, but again, there were still kind of problems in which I saw with Riley's game where he was getting caught, a bit too much than what I would have probably liked to then see him now take such a big step up again, like I say. Masternak, I think, is a very underrated fighter. He was beating up Billam Smith, in my opinion, until he suffered an injury. Again, I feel like if you suffer an injury through a fight, it then often is meant to go to, the scorecards or something like that. But of course, that didn't happen, and Billam Smith was instantly given the win. Again, Masternak, I'm sure, was annoyed at that, and I mean, it could have been made into a rematch, and I thought they were, but unfortunately for him, it wasn't able to happen, and it didn't happen. And he has had other losses, but against very, experienced names. He's not really lost to anybody who's not really an experienced fighter. Of course, Billam Smith was a world champion for a few fights. He fought and lost to names like Tony Bellew as well, and Tikos is another name as well as other names as well. He's only ever had one other loss on his resume, one other TKO loss, my bad, on his resume, which again he didn't lose via TKO to Bellew or to Tikos, and he shouldn't, really have been given the loss to Billam Smith via TKO in my opinion. And last time out he went and won the vacant European title via stoppage in his home country because Moscada vacated that title. So again, he's in a good spot in his career. He's been able to rebuild back to a good position again, which he seems to be able to do each and every time he loses, and then he gets a big fight against a big name and then loses that one and then he comes back again. But I just do feel like he's a very underrated fighter. Of course, a big factor in this fight is the fact that Masternak is 38 and Riley is 28. There is a big age gap between the two of them, but again, Masternak could really show some experience here. Riley is a talented fighter with decent movement and strong fundamentals as well, but this is, like I mentioned, a major step up for him in Masternak. Masternak has a strong chin and doesn't get discouraged easily, and Riley showed gaps in his work where he did just slow down and allow Clark to have bits of success and pockets of success, and he did end up going toe-to-toe with Clark in the back end of the fight and started getting caught with quite a few shots then, and almost, got wobbled a little bit in that final round from Clark. And I think Masternak will put on the pressure, be caught by the jab coming in because he doesn't really move his head that much, but will continue to work, possibly more than Riley. That's why I'm going with a Masternak win via split decision. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight, but I think when the gaps open up from Riley through just a lack of experience, and this is his first 12 rounder as well, it's going to be, like I say, an all action type fight. Oh wait, no, his last fight probably was a first 12 rounder, but again, he was showing weaknesses in the latter part of that fight as well, and his movement isn't bad, but it's not, he's not razor sharp with his reactions or anything like that either, and he does have times where, like I say, he does switch off and allow his opponent to get back into it a little bit more. And I think Masternak is just not going to get discouraged, probably get caught by a jab a lot like he did against Billam Smith, but then continue to have success just coming forward and working away, and again just be catching Viddal Riley too much to then win a close split decision, even though it is in Riley's home country of England. I still think Masternak is going to be able to do enough to get a decision, a victory. And then who can go on to fight next? I mean, if it's a real competitive fight, Riley again. If not, Billam Smith again. I feel like that could definitely make sense as a fight at the moment, with Billam Smith, coming off a decent win last time out. But again, he's not really ready for a world title fight, I don't believe, just yet, unless they do Masternak versus Billam Smith for the now vacant IBF title because Opetaya got stripped. That could possibly happen. Or Perez. Perez is a good fight. Two older guys with only a 2-year age gap between the two of them. Perez being 40 now and trying to rebuild himself That could be a good fight that's be made as well. Final fight which we're going to be speaking about on this card is Denzel Bentley versus Endry Saavedra for the WBO Interim World Middleweight title, and whoever wins this fight could very easily end up being elevated to being a full champion, with all the issues happening with Janibek and his kind of drug being caught things at the moment. I think he's been stripped of one title already, the IBF, I think. And so, the WBO could strip him at any point and it wouldn't surprise me. So this is a huge fight for both the number 1 and the number 2 ranked guy in the division in both of these guys. This is what makes sense for an interim world title. When there is a champion who isn't able to fight in Janibek due to whatever, incident. I mean, if he has drug cheat, then he should be, stripped of his title and shouldn't be allowed to fight again. But this makes sense to them make an interim title when the champion's caught up with some problems outside the ring, then make an interim championship and have the number 1 versus the number 2 guy against each other. That's what makes the most sense, and it doesn't happen enough in boxing, and it's just really refreshing to see it actually happening here. Denzel obviously has had a fight with Janibek already, and he arguably gave him his toughest test at a world level he'd ever have, really. Of course, that was kind of sandwiched in between multiple stoppages. I think Janibek stopped every opponent since then. And so Bentley really did give him a good test going into later rounds. Even though Janibek won clearly enough, Denzel did test him into them later rounds especially. He did seem to be around British level for kind of the majority of his career, Denzel, and he does occasionally slip up against the likes of Cash and Heaney as well, which neither of them have really aged the best, but the talent has always been seen to be there. Again, we just can't really be seeing him get caught out and slip up like he has been. Queensberry have continued to back him, and just last time out, he was able to become British and European champion, the 3rd time he'd become British champion, I think, and he was able to beat Brad Pauls, which was a win that's also aged well as well, with Pauls going out there and beating Shaquille Thompson last time out. So it's definitely a win that's aged well and could possibly even be made into a rematch at some point. But Bentley did win that clearly enough. Paul showed a lot of heart and did make it tough for Bentley, but then Bentley went out there and got a nice knockdown as well, which really did kind of change the way that the fight was going. And, the power has always seemed to be a big problem for anybody that goes up against Bentley. But Saavedra is also a power puncher as well. But Bentley, he's kind of been around British, like I say, level for a long time. And a lot of the top British names at middleweight, he has kind of gone in there and already beaten. Saavedra hasn't fought at the same level as Bentley. He hasn't fought at a world title level, but he is seen as a hard hitter as well. And since coming to Australia for his fights, he's been having more success and doing well. He beat Hardman well, and he beat Nielsen well as well, and that was kind of sandwiched in between a draw in America to Australian fighter Tapia, which was a brilliant fight. And I don't know how that was given as a draw, really. I mean, Saavedra managed to get 3 knockdowns in the fight, and Tapia also knocked down Saavedra with a brutal shot, and then Saavedra was able to get back to his feet as well. But he still went to a draw. I feel like if Saavedra had distributed them 3 knockouts throughout 3 rounds, he probably would have won, but it was just the fact that the first 2, I believe, were in, the same round. It meant that it didn't get scored, more than a 10-8, I don't believe. It might have been a 10-7, again, I might be wrong, but, he's been around the WBO rankings for a while. He won the international and the intercontinental title. Again, I was surprised to see the Tapia fight not remade again to try and avenge things, but Saavedra's team, again, through the 3 knockdowns, I suppose you can argue that he has just been moved along because of it, because of the fact that he was able to knock down Tapia 3 times and was unfortunate to not get given the win. He does have a loss on his resume, though, against Atunde William, who isn't really that high level of a fighter. I mean, he gave Troy Isley some problems, William, but he did lose last time out to Cedeno pretty comfortably. So, it's not the best loss to have on his resume, but William is definitely a better fighter than Nathan Heaney, in my opinion. Bentley, of course, has good power, but he also has good speed as well and good timing as well. He's really timing some nice shots last time out on pause, and he can get behind a real strong jab. And I do feel that he can also, get caught out with volume, which Saavedra might be able to have success through his volume. And he does go back in lines, and I also think he could definitely underestimate Saavedra, but again, you shouldn't, because it is a world level type fight, and I don't know if he will. Again, this needs to be a challenge, I feel like, for Bentley to really, like I say, bring the best out of him and make him thrive, which hopefully, this will be. And with Saavedra's style, this fight should really gel to be a really good fight, in my opinion. He puts the pressure on, he throws a lot in close, he tries to smother you, but he doesn't do too much, in my opinion. He will, like I say, just find the right moments to just work a lot, and then again, he will have lots of success with the power as well in close. But again, he doesn't always work too well at a mid-range, which again could go into Bentley's favour if he can keep it at mid-range, and he can be timed, which we did see when he got knocked down from a timed shot from Tapia. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think Denzel Bentley is going to be able to win via a TKO in round 8. I think it could be quite a big shot, but with Bentley's timing and his ability to kind of pull counter, it could really catch Saavedra out. I'd be interested to see how the volume of Saavedra affects Bentley and how easily he can get in close. But I think Bentley's power through, like I say, going and timing punches could, like I say, really cause problems to Saavedra. Saavedra's power could cause problems to Bentley as well. No doubt, if Bentley is trying to time for too long, or if he's going back in lines and he gets caught up on the ropes, Saavedra could really distribute some punches. And so, like I say, this could be a real entertaining fight for as long as it lasts. But I think Bentley is going to be able to hurt him and get him out of there. We haven't really seen Bentley be hurt all too much since the Cash fight. I mean, he was able to take punches well from Janibek, and so again, I think that's just a good telling to show that his chin is still very good. And Saavedra, of course, we haven't seen him at that same level just yet. So I think, like I say, Denzel Bentley, a TKO win quite late on in the fight is my prediction. Then we can go on to fight next. I mean, like I say, he could end up becoming a world champion if he wins this fight. So I don't feel like he's going to fight Janibek again, no matter what. If Janibek is allowed to fight again at any point, then they'll probably do Janibek versus Lara again. So for Bentley, if he doesn't become a world champion, then there is other contenders around. I mean, Yolny Hernandez is a good fight, but he's also, I think, mandatory for the WBA title in Lara, so that fight might end up happening. Marnecki Jr. is a decent fight as well. He's signed with Zuffa though, so again, I don't know if that would happen. So Tim Tszyu versus Nurja is happening soon. Undefeated Albanian Nurja fighting Tim Tszyu. If Tszyu gets through that, now he's moved up into the middleweight division, that could be a real good fight there to be made, which could definitely, be probably brought to England and could sell as a good fight with Bentley versus Tim Tszyu as a main event. But again, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.